Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
And first and foremost this morning, my thanks to the well-known author Stephen King for effectively framing the question to which I'd like to direct your attention. First today, it is, well, true that once upon a time, Americans didn't like Russians. What happened? Let me be a little bit more specific. What Stephen King has tweeted this morning is, once upon a time, children, the Republicans didn't like the Russians, then a good elf named Putin came along, and all that changed. How did it change? How has it changed so profoundly that an American president, an outgoing American president, can effectively tell the people of his country that a foreign power that not that long ago would have been at the very top of the list of foreign powers we are most suspicious of, most untrustworthy of, has interfered in our election, has deliberately attempted to disrupt our democracy? And America doesn't seem to mind, or at least huge swathes of America doesn't seem to mind.
President Obama has warned that he'll retaliate against Russia for its alleged interference in the US presidential election campaign. The CIA has declared that cyber attacks which targeted the Democratic Party were intended to help propel Donald Trump to the White House. Mr. Trump himself has dismissed, even mocked these claims, whilst Russia says that America needs to provide evidence or risk looking indecent. Well, Parag O'Brien is in Washington. Parag, tell us more.
Well, Matt, President Obama just about to take to the stage to give his last press conference of this year. And the big question, the burning question, will be when he talks about retaliating against Russia for hacking, exactly what does he mean? And of course, if anything newsworthy comes out of that during the programme, we'll bring it straight to you. But the hacking story gathering more and more momentum here. The reason, at its heart, claims that Russia hacked American democracy and did more than hack it, planted a virus in it. The Trump thank you rally last night in Hershey, Pennsylvania, dubbed the sweetest place on earth. USA drained the swamp, build that wall. There were no chance of what do we want to go after the Russians who hacked American democracy by only releasing Democrat emails time to bolster the Trump presidential campaign, according to the CIA. I guess it lacks a certain ring.
Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it.
It is President Obama's clarion call today, though.
When any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be.
So just to be clear, President Obama considers this so serious it warrants the declaration of a sort of cyber Cold War. It won't last as long as the last one. Probably has a shelf life of about 35 days. Then Donald Trump takes over. So why are we here? A quick recap. Earlier this year, the chief of staff of Hillary Clinton's emails were hacked, and over October and November released in batches by WikiLeaks, timed for maximum impact. The damage they did, they spoke to a cozy relationship between Hillary Clinton and Wall Street bankers. So why has the whole thing now reignited? Because off the back of newspaper reports, the CIA have acknowledged that they were purposely leaked to maximize impact and damage Clinton's campaign, bolstering Trump's campaign. How has the president-elect reacted? By trashing the CIA, by speaking of a politicized decision to release this information, by basically positioning himself as arbiter-in-chief of the intelligence they offer. The bigger picture here, the relationship reset between the US and Russia. For satirists, the new year will catapult us from Cold War to love, actually. Now it's about clinching deals, not sweet nothings. This one-time Trump advisor, just returned from addressing business leaders in Moscow, spoke to us today.
And there have been a lot of tensions because of Crimea, Ukraine, and also Syria. But I think that it's important for a new administration to start things fresh.
So your take is that Donald Trump is perfectly entitled to reset that relationship?
Absolutely.
The other relationship that really matters now, the one between President Trump and new CIA boss Mike Pompeo.
Just want to ask, do you agree with the determination by the CIA that Russia interfered in the election? Is there a reason for a pause? Could we talk?
It's back on the ground at a Trump rally. You really see why this matters. Patriots whose relationship with key American institutions in meltdown.
So you don't trust your intelligence services?
No, essentially, why? You'd have to be an idiot to trust what the CIA says, yeah.
Cue the man that these people trust more than any other public figure.
I will never, ever let you down, believe me.
And if he doesn't deliver, you better watch out. Now, also on that hacking operation, audio has emerged. Very strong words from Hillary Clinton at a function last night. She spoke about Vladimir Putin personally directing this hacking operation. Now, while all eyes are on the relationship between the US and Russia, the one to watch is the relationship between the US and China. You'll remember the week before last, Donald Trump sort of tugging at the rug of underneath the one China policy with a call to the Taiwanese president. Well, it's emerged today that that has ratcheted up a notch. The Chinese seizing an unmanned American drone in the South China Sea. So in the run-up to Christmas here, the geopolitical plates are on the move.
Trying to dissect the Donald Trump phenomenon is increasingly difficult from a kind of, what do you call it, from a rational point of view. He's now on a victory tour that is dedicated mostly to boasting about how many lies he told during the election. You think I'm exaggerating or kidding? On the subject of election rigging, he said, "Oh, I said all that during the election, but I won, so I don't care now." I mean, it's actually utterly unprecedented. I don't think the media has got away yet to deal with this. Yesterday, he tweeted some criticism of Vanity Fair magazine. It took 30 seconds for someone to point out that Vanity Fair magazine had just run a bad review of his restaurant. A bad review of his restaurant. When he tweets about Boeing or aircraft deals, share prices shift immediately. His children sit in on meetings with billionaire tech developers. It's Russian. Is that why America isn't that worried about Russian interference in the election? They've decided they quite like the way the Russians do it. Keep the public in the dark, tell them what they want to hear, and scapegoat anybody else. I genuinely don't know. I do know, however, that something weird has happened in every corner of the media. I've got a horrible feeling that historians of the future are probably going to track it back to talk radio at the beginning. It had its roots in talk radio because that was the first place where on American programs and some programs in this country, not this one, you can ring in and talk absolute nonsense and get completely unchallenged. And that's when media started changing. Partly because of social media, but talk radio in a way was the very first social media. So that's how you end up with a country where people who are now in positions of power apparently bought into absolute hogwash about... I presume that if you're relatively insulated from the absolute madness that has happened now in the coverage of American politics, but European politics is going in the same direction, you're probably going to think I'm making this up. Significant swathes of Donald Trump's core support believe that Hillary Clinton's key allies were involved in the abduction of Madeleine McCann. At what point do people go, "Oh yeah, hang on a minute, yeah, all right, I don't like Barack Obama much, yeah, but that's mad." Then you've got that New York pizza restaurant where people are actually... we had a caller last week, did you hear? Actually trying to argue, oh no, there's quite a lot more to this than meets the eye. The idea that Hillary Clinton's key aide was running a secret paedophile ring under the guise of a New York pizza restaurant. I guess what they've done, and this is maybe what they've learnt from Vladimir Putin somehow, what they've done is, and actually from Brexit, I think, this is part of the reason why Trump was so impressed by Brexit, is that it turned out you could tell lies, absolutely barefaced lies to the people, and if they wanted to hear it enough, they'd cheer you to the rafters and turn off their truth radar. So where are we now? We're in a place where, and I mean, I don't know if I'd be feeling despair if I was American, but I'm fascinated to know why Americans aren't feeling despair. We're now in a place where Putin's hackers are, according to US intelligence agencies, okay, The US Defense Secretary has told European allies that their democracies are under attack from hackers working for the Kremlin. You know I indulge sometimes. I get in a little bit of hyperbole. I don't mean to, but I sit here in front of you every morning and I start talking quite calmly. And then as my brain starts sort of chugging into a higher gear, I realise that this isn't just a conversational topic that some people have on a radio station based in London broadcasting to the whole of Britain. This is absolutely mind-boggling. But because we're so used to it now, because this stuff is washing over us every day, I think we've lost the ability to be shocked. We've lost the ability to be staggered. There's sort of levels of delusion have now reached such an epic scale that those of us who try at least to plot a clear course through the absurdities of both extremes in politics are beginning to wonder whether or not we're inhabiting the same planet as other people. Daily Mail columnist today calling upon so-called Remainers to be less nasty. This is the newspaper that put enemies of the people on the front page and thought it was relevant to a judge's objectivity to mention that one of them was a gay fencer. Please be less nasty. Snowflakes. Same newspaper put the conviction of the terrorist, racist murderer of an elected British Member of Parliament on page 30. Today they've got a columnist saying, oh, please be less nasty. Oh, you're so nasty. And you sort of wonder what planet you're actually living on. And I guess we're living on 70 million different planets now. We're all building a news... Are we? Are we all building a news agenda that just suits what we already think? I cannot, as a former newspaper journalist who's now been broadcasting in various different guises for over a decade, I cannot begin to answer the question of why Americans wouldn't care, why we wouldn't care, why the alarms haven't gone off. The American Secretary of State for Defence has told European allies, that's us, that their democracies are under attack from hackers working for the Kremlin. And it's true. You don't end up having American voters who've never left Wyoming believing that Hillary Clinton's aides were somehow involved in the abduction of Madeleine McCann, unless there is somebody pulling some pretty powerful strings. To get the stories out there looking so plausible, looking so credible, and reaching so many corners of the country, that is an epic undertaking. Some amazing journalism being done about the so-called troll houses. The notion that they are literally paying people to bombard Western media and Western social media and Western comment sections with unbelievable untruths and exaggerations. And I guess there is an element, I wouldn't say smugness, but there's a degree of complacency in what I am going to continue to call established media, in the same way that established medicine is an alternative to alternative medicine, which isn't medicine at all. Thus, established media is real media, and all these weird websites telling you that American fruit juice companies are changing the chemical makeup of their cartons in order to turn the nation gay. True, they do print that. I'll continue to call that, if you will, alternative media or unreal media or fake news. You just begin to wonder whether or not Russia have already won. We have now surrendered anything that remotely resembles objectivity or intelligence on such an epic scale that Vladimir Putin is not just close to the finishing line. He's halfway through his lap of honour. You've got a man in the White House effectively boasting about how easy it is to lie to the electorate being told that they've been completely corrupted by a foreign power, an enemy government, and you'll still have people on both sides of the Atlantic going onto their weird little websites and finding their weird little justifications for believing that this is anything other than grand larceny. Let me tell you a few things about Russia. The phone lines are open, by the way. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. I want you to tell me how America has moved from a place that was desperately fearful, paranoid in fact, about Reds under the bed, to a place that appears to be comfortable with Reds running the whole show. Okay? That's what I want. What do you think has happened? How has this happened? If we'd sat here at any point in any of the last 6 decades and an American defense secretary was warning us that Russia was subverting our democracy by telling our voters lies, that's how you do it. I get you to believe a lie, you'll vote in a way that is against your own interests, okay? I know we've got people in this country who do it very well, like Mr. Farage. He will tell you a lie and you will vote against your own interests. You could argue that politicians have always done that, but they've always done it with a kind of rule book in their back pocket, as if like, there are some lies you can't tell. You can't actually tell people that the earth is flat. You can now. You can tell people that Hillary Clinton's people were involved in the abduction of Madeleine McCann. You might as well tell them. You might as well tell them that the moon is made of cheese. And this desire for proof, this search for evidence, it's disappeared. Here's why Vladimir Putin is doing what he's doing, all right? It's not difficult, it's not complicated, and it's quite easy actually to prove. The reason he's doing what he's doing is because he absolutely needs to keep his approval ratings high at home. Because economically speaking and in terms of social advancement, social policy, mobility, the ability to earn honest, decent money, Russia is absolutely broke. It's broken. Part of the reason, one of the main reasons for that, is that Vladimir Putin's cronies, his key allies and friends, have exported billions and billions and billions of pounds from that country, okay? They hate the West, ostensibly. The newspapers will tell you how corrupt the West is. The television stations will tell you how corrupt the West is, how awful it is. And all the people running that operation are bombarding billions of dirty money into particularly the British economy, actually, but all over the West. It is that simple. If the ordinary people of Russia find out the scale of the theft that has been perpetrated upon them by the political leadership of the country, that government will go the way of Ukraine. Now, this is the point at which the Russian trolls ring in and tweet and text and say that the president of Ukraine was democratically elected, which is true. He was democratically elected on a promise, on a mandate to sign an agreement with the European Union that was moving towards closer relations. When he then refused to sign that, a revolution happened. You see? It would be a bit like David Cameron promising, if you really need me to spell this out, to hold a referendum on the European Union membership and then getting elected as Prime Minister and saying we're not going to have one. So look, if you are of a Brexit disposition and you quite like the authoritarian oligarch, look, if you think it's in for this winter, that's what it would be like. It would be like you voting for David Cameron because you really wanted a European Union referendum and then him turning around and flipping you the bird a couple of years after the election. That's why the Ukrainian revolution happened. Okay, now you get all the texts and emails coming in from people saying, oh no, it was the FBI. How would you feel if NATO were camped on your doorstep? And all of that comes out of Kremlin-funded social media hives. It all comes out of troll houses. All of that I understand. What I don't understand is why people who've had the ability to be as well educated as anyone else in this country choose to believe this nonsense. They choose to believe it. What is it? Is it as simple as saying, here is a white supremacist oligarch, and we now have, 30 to 40% of electorates possibly in Western countries going, yeah, all right. Yeah, I can see there's a downside to having white supremacist oligarchs, but I think, on balance, the pros outweigh the cons. I'm going to vote for Trump. I'm going to vote for Le Pen. It's quite remarkable. It's also 10:16, so I should shut up now. Give me a ring, okay? It's the shift, all right? I suppose, have to endure a few people who've swallowed it wholesale, maybe even some of the ones that are paid and pretend not to be. But the bottom line is this. America, in the space of 12 months, if you look at the graph of Republicans in particular, has gone from considering Vladimir Putin a threat to being comfortable with the idea of him subverting American democracy. I just want you to tell me how. 0345 6060 973. How has that happened? So even if you're getting ready to send me a text saying, I think you'll find if you look at info whatsits, key 101, I think you'll find that the sources of this, even if you're getting ready to do the Kremlin's work for them, I just want you to explain to me how that country has moved from a place of paranoia about Reds under the beds to comfort with democratic corruption being undertaken by an enemy power. Wow. 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. It's 1017. There's a few phone lines free. 0345, well, actually there's two, so be quick if you want one of them. 0345 6060 973. If we split the world into two, okay, people who are absolutely staggered that Russia can interfere in an American election, can seek to subvert American democracy, and cannot understand how America can go along with it. And then the other half is the half that's going along with it. And I can only conclude that they just don't realise what they're doing. They're kind of buying into this notion of, oh, I don't like the establishment. That includes MI6. Oh, I don't like the establishment. That includes the CIA. Oh, I don't like the establishment. That includes every single structure and institution that has kept us safe in the West for the longest period of history ever. Yeah, but still, Putin, you know, he's a tough guy. I admire him. Wow. Here is the President of the United States of America.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it.
There's no pretense that it's untrue, except in these corners of alternative media where truth is not really valued. But for the rest of us, for the whole world, why is this not all bets are off territory? I genuinely don't get it, but you do, so you'll tell me. Robert's in Hammersmith. Robert, what's going on?
Hey, James. I think, and first of all, let me say that I think Russia is a terrible country run by terrible people. So I don't agree with what they've done. But I will say, I think that the perspective of the American voter is one of pragmatism. I'm not talking about all voters. I'm talking about the guys that voted Trump into power, people that can't see geopolitics because they're too desperate on a daily basis. And so I think that's one issue. I think the second issue is you got to remember they voted in a business guy. And there's not a lot of moral latitude or social consciousness in a business mindset. And not only is he a billionaire, but he's surrounded with.
I don't want to do another post-mortem on how Trump got elected. I want you to talk to me about these people who are so desperate that they don't care their democracy is being subverted by a foreign power. I think part of the answer to that question is the language I'm using, isn't it? They just wouldn't recognise what I'm describing. So tell me how they've gone in the space of a decade from thinking that Russia represented everything that was rotten on the planet to thinking that actually he's a pretty cool guy.
Well, I'm Canadian, but I've spent many years working in the U.S. I can tell you that, first of all, you're dealing with the people that, and I'm not disparaging them, but the reality is they see themselves as the greatest country in the world. They see themselves as the most powerful country in the world. And that narrative is even more profound in the kinds of communities that voted Trump into power.
But that would seem to me, to my untutored eye, the more persuaded you are that you're the most powerful country in the world, the more outraged you would be by the idea of your main rival getting one over on you by subverting your election.
Yeah, but the point is they don't see it that way.
How do they see it?
Well, they see the fact that there's a lot of people just like them that are tired of the status quo.
No, I don't want to know how Trump won. I want to know how Putin won.
How Putin won. I mean, think about it. I mean, first of all, it's called asymmetric warfare. The Russians are great at math. They can't beat the U.S. militarily. So what do? This is like the ultimate, that's why Putin tried to win. Why did the American voters let him? And listen to this quote from, I must get it right. This is the official sort of White House line on why the hacking has been undertaken. It began, this is the US Defense Secretary, Ash Carter, it began as a personal vendetta against Mrs. Clinton, who had questioned the legitimacy of Mrs. Putin's election win in 2011. That's fine. This is an intelligence official speaking now. The goal was to split off key American allies by creating the image that other countries couldn't depend on the US to be a credible global leader anymore. It's working. And yet you start by telling me Americans think they're the most powerful country in the world. This is deliberately designed to undermine that status, and it's working, and they're cool with it. I don't get it. No, because in the midst of the election, the electorate, the guys who put him in power, did not see the system being manipulated by Russia. They didn't see it. I mean, they're complaining now. Why did the CIA wait to come out as aggressively and loudly as they have now to announce that the system was manipulated? So if you're...
But they had to. They couldn't go sooner because Donald Trump would have stood on stage in Las Vegas and said, now look what they're doing. So it's this anti-establishment rhetoric's at the heart of it because it includes everything. It's not just career politicians, whatever the hell that means, or, metropolitan elites or intellectuals or the educated. The establishment is anything you want it to be, including your own security services.
No, I get that. But I mean, my point is that if you're Joe Smith living in middle America, first of all, the chance that guy knows a clue about what's going on is almost zero. The chance that person, if he even did know, would think that Russia could possibly harm America would never factor into their thinking. But beyond that, every day they'd be sitting there going, so my choice is, vote for somebody who I think is going to blow the system up in my favor,
Yeah.
or vote for the status quo.
No, I'm less confused about that bit. I've said it 3 times now. I understand why they voted for Trump, and I guess what you're telling me is the reason why they're going along with all the Putin stuff is because they just don't get it, which leads us back down.
Don't get it.
Pardon?
Yeah, they just don't get it.
Which leads us back down that road, which again has Brexit echoes, which is that, you know, the reason why it happened is because a lot of people didn't really understand the issues. Boom, you're condescending, you're sneering, you're a member of the intellectual elite, and that's the reason why you lost.
But James, with respect, I mean, the bottom line is that in this age of social media, we live in bubbles, all of us. You know, whether that bubble is Facebook and false news, or whether the bubble is reading The Guardian every day and listening to LBC, we exist in bubbles.
But if you're with respect to you, if you're reading The Guardian every day and listening to LBC, you're not in a bubble. In fact, if you listen to LBC properly and listen to a variety of different people, you're not in a bubble. If you present on LBC and spend most of your days arguing with people, you're not in a bubble. If you spend your days in a dressing gown on your laptop, exclusively accessing websites like InfoWars, you're in a bubble.
But, I mean, one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton lost the election is because the guys that voted Trump into power felt that they were people from New York, people from San Francisco that didn't have a clue.
Yeah, I get that, but it's not a bubble. That is a place where truth is valued versus a place where it isn't. I mean, even the narrative of a bubble is part of the problem. You sort of come up with this idea, wow, how many times have we heard it on this programme? Well, you can prove anything with facts, James. I don't care what the statistics are, I know what I feel, and that has got the whip hand. But what I don't get is how if you're appealing to, let's call it a new word, let's call it emotivism as opposed to nativism. So you're appealing to emotion, it's probably not a new word. You're appealing to that purely. The easiest thing in the world to do should have been to make you spooked about a foreign dictator interfering in your election. If it is emotivism that is at the heart of all this, then the Putin angle should be the point at which the wheels fall off. And yet it seems to be making the Pantechnicon move faster. Robert, thank you very much indeed. You can grab the phone line, of course, that Robert vacates as soon as he hangs up. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. What are we actually wrestling with here? Confusion is the answer. Confusion about how a foreign power can interfere in American democracy, according to the only people you can trust on this, i.e. the agencies charged with protecting American democracy. And it can be okay for so many people. Hey, it's cool, it's all right. It's only Vladimir Putin. Is it as simple as saying that actually human beings are essentially, most of us are essentially quite forelock tugging and deferential? All this talk of anti-establishment is nonsense. We just want a big, strong man to tell us that everything's going to be all right. Even though history suggests every single person who stands up and says, I'm a big, strong man, everything's going to be all right, is a liar, we still fall for it. Like a sort of battered spouse returning to his or her abuser, convinced that this time she won't smash him over the head with a frying pan or punch her in the face with his signet ring. We'll just keep going back because he's a big, strong man, and we like that. That's all I got. It's got to be more complicated. Help me out after this. The US Defense Secretary has told European allies that our democracies are under attack from hackers working for the Kremlin. The President of the United States has expressed his conviction that this is precisely what is happening and has revealed he has spoken to the Russian President about it. And yet significant swathes of his country, and I suspect ours, are untroubled by it. I just want to know why. I mean, all the laws of logic dictate that if a fella who routinely annexes and invades sovereign neighbours, locks up journalists, kills political rivals, sends goons all the way to London to murder a British citizen on the streets of our city with polonium, all of these things, I'm afraid, at risk of sounding a little crass, that's Bond villain, right? And James Bond, he is intelligence service. Why have we changed sides? 0345 6060 973. There you go. Why have we gone from MI5 to SMERSH? Tony's in Chiswick. Tony, what would you like to say?
Hello, James. Basically, what I think's happened is the people, we've lost complete trust in anything establishment, and that includes intelligence services. Because intelligence services, basically, what you're saying is you've put 100% trust into the intelligence services in what they're saying about Russia. And
yes.
I don't know about you, but that seems a little naive.
Oh, okay. So where would you put? Where would you go for your intelligence?
I'm not saying I'd go anywhere else, but I would look into it. I mean, can you really prove?
So you'd look into it?
What the intelligence are saying? Can you prove it? You personally?
Can I prove what the intelligence is saying? Of course I can't prove what the intelligence is saying. In the same way I can't fix my own car, which is why I take it to a mechanic.
Well, it's a complete trust. We have to put trust in things we know nothing about. So
Yeah, precisely, which is how the Volvo works when they give it back to me.
Don't you think that's a bit dangerous? Just answer me
What,
that.
giving my car to a mechanic to fix?
No, we're not talking about cars, James. We're talking about intelligence services giving us information about Russia.
Yes. And my question to you is, if you're not going to trust your own intelligence services, whose are you going to trust? Did you see the French terrorist explaining why Britain has not had as many attacks as France?
No, I didn't.
Do you want to take a guess on what he said the reason was?
Go on, go ahead.
No, take a guess.
But I don't know.
Well, have a guess.
Well, where did you get your information from?
Him, the terrorist who was interviewed about why Britain hasn't been, or brought up the subject of why, despite doing reconnaissance trips to Britain, there weren't actually any terror attacks here. Guess what reason he gave, the actual terrorist, for the reason why Britain... Pardon?
The intelligence service. Let me guess, the intelligence service.
Well done, genius. But you can't trust them, can you?
In all the newspapers and all the news, we're continually being told that these terror plots are being foiled, but we have no way of proving...
He's a terrorist.
There was a terror plot in the first place.
Oh, OK.
How do we have any idea?
Tony, unintentionally, you have provided part of the answer, and the answer is that in your funny little place, you think you know more than the CIA, the FBI, the massed ranks of the world's established media.
I'm saying...
Wow.
It's dangerous for us to put 100% faith in people that are representing the establishment that we're all against.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
It's pretty simple. If be a tinfoil hat expert.
If your house gets burgled tonight, who are you going to call?
Yeah. Not the police, because I've had the police.
Oh, there you go. That's it. No, mate, I can't do any better than that. Whatever I come up with, you're going to be better than I am. If a family member gets murdered tomorrow, who are you going to call?
Murdered? Of course the police.
What? You can't trust the police?
Murder.
You're going to put 100% trust in the police?
Well, no. Oh,
all right, then. So who else are you going to call?
I have a little bit of doubt.
Who else are you going to call? A little bit of doubt is fine. But when the President of the United States of America is telling you, and all of the intelligence community is queuing up behind him to confirm it, and on the other side you've got some weird bloggers, and you, I guess it's easy to pick a side. And that's why I get so confused. Eric's in Liverpool. Eric, help me out.
Hi, James. Right. The first thing you mentioned this morning was why it seems to be more acceptable that we're being spied on. Well, I think it's more acceptable now that the Russia and all the other countries...
not quite that. The question was why aren't America more... It's not being spied on. It's being fed misinformation designed to disrupt their democracy and undermine their position as a country that their European allies can rely on. It's not going through the sock drawer, Eric. It's seeking to influence our domestic politics.
Yeah, but I think because it's become more acceptable that other countries are now going through, other countries' sock drawers, and plus the machinery, the mechanism of confirmation bias, the internet, has become so common now. People are wearing it on the wrists.
Yeah.
And if you look at the TV in the last 50 years, we never have Russia Today in the 1960s on the television.
No, but this is the weird thing. You use Russia Today as an example, Kremlin-funded propaganda outlet, yeah, which looks just like a real news organisation. But the people who buy into all of this are, if you will, the authoritarians, the people who think that liberalism is their enemy. But without a liberal attitude to freedom of media, Russia Today would never get off the ground. So again, I find myself sort of doubly confused. Until, of course, you realise that the kind of people who like Russia Today don't want to live in a world where there's a pluralist media and completely bogus outfits like Russia Today can get on air. They want to live in a world where the only outfit on air is Russia Today.
Yeah. But I think also, if you go back to the 60s, the Profumo affair, that guy had to resign, that member of the government, whereas now, they can do things in Clapham Common, and it's perceived by people.
You might be veering a little bit. Having a little bit of illicit action on Clapham Common isn't quite the same as sharing a mistress with the Russian military attaché.
No, but I think that...
Mate, if Ian Duncan Smith was sharing a mistress with the Russian military attaché, he'd still have to resign, I promise you, Eric. Things haven't changed. Yeah, no, it's still... I know it's 2016, but I'm going all in on that. He would still have to resign.
I understand that. But I think it's perceived by a lot of people that politicians are getting away with a lot more. And I think once you lose faith in proper authority...
You lose faith in everything.
Well, you start believing in it. You know, a vicar once told me that when you lose faith in God, and I'm an atheist,
yes,
you're likely to believe in anything. And I think in with the authorities, you know, we've had Vietnam, we've had Nixon with Watergate, and I think because of the advent of the internet, I don't want to blame the internet for everything, but I think gradually, because anyone can set up a website that looks quite, you know, impressive.
Yes.
They can say things and people believe. On Facebook, I call it Facebook. Some of the things I've read on that, and I'm blind, but I have a screen reader on my mobile phone.
Yes.
And some of the things I've read, honestly, James, are absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, but they're not. They're the truth, and it's people like me that are telling lies. The thing that upsets me, and I will use the word upset, I don't use it very often, but I know the people that risk their lives to go to these zones. You know, they're my friends and they're my colleagues, and they go to places like Yemen, and they risk their lives to report from places like Syria. And then you go onto the websites that you describe, and they've got some kid in a shower cubicle tapping away on his computer, claiming that the people risking their lives are part of some international conspiracy.
But the scary thing I find is, if you take your two daughters, they've probably got on their wrist or in their pocket more connective power than what the governments had when I was their age.
Yeah.
And I'm 61 now.
Yeah, and you can find what, if you look hard enough, Sorry, Eric, carry on.
They're going up at an age now where they need to be taught how to differentiate between good media and bad media.
No, but now you're sneering and being condescending, you see. It really is the perfect trap into which we've walked. And, of course, the people who are happy to be in the trap are the ones that need to be persuaded before the rest of us have got any chance of getting out of it. You say people have been persuaded that absolute hogwash is credible because it looks credible and it looks real. But they will say, you're part of the sneering metropolitan elite, Eric. How dare you condescend to me and suggest that you're clever enough to know what's true and what isn't, but that I'm thick because I believe that Hillary Clinton was involved in the abduction of Madeleine McCann.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem really is that people don't want to have to think. I mean, a lot of things like they believe in prefabricated ideas that are sort of cling film wrapped for them. They don't want to have to do a bit of research. Or their idea of a bit of research would be to go on Facebook or, you know, to go on Google or something and look for the...
And find something that confirms what they already thought. We're in the realms of confirmation bias. You make a good point. It makes me wonder whether I was a bit hard with the lad in Chiswick. When you describe it in those terms, it's, well, you don't trust anything. I don't trust anything at all. Why would I trust the CIA? Why would the point is that civilization depends upon making a decision about who you're going to trust. And civilization is under threat if we decide to trust someone like Vladimir Putin, who is desperate to see disunity and disruption sown in the West so that he can then say to Russian people, hey, look, I'm not that bad. I'm not that bad. Look what's happening over there. David's in Ealing. David, what would you like to say?
Well, I can't understand, James, why you're so naive. And I know someone else has said that before. You're a journalist, and the duty of a journalist is to find out the facts and then make a decision. I mean, there are journalists around like John Pilger, Coburn, and other people that are...
Sorry, who was the other one?
Patrick Coburn, is it? Patrick...
I don't know. You're telling me.
Well, you're right.
And they don't believe the CIA and the FBI on this one, and the President of America.
Well, why should you... Look...
No, I just want to clarify before we go further. Have they gone on the record saying that they think Obama is lying? Because if they have, then it's important that you mention it. If they haven't, I need to clarify that so that you don't libel them. This is one of the things you understand as a journalist. Have they gone on the record saying that this isn't true?
They've gone on the record, not they, but I'm saying, if you look at the facts...
Mate, I'm going to get sued if you say on air that these men have said that Obama is a liar and they haven't.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, why have you mentioned them?
No, I said there are journalists that are making an effort to get the objective truth, and there are few around. Not many, but there are few
But they haven't rejected the story that we're discussing.
I don't know if they have.
Right, okay, so let's leave them out of it and carry on talking about why you don't believe the CIA.
The CIA lied about the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. They've lied about many things. We know from facts that they've lied about things. They've been responsible for changing regimes all over the world. They were a part of the American empire system.
Yes, all of these things were undertaken in defence of American interests. So I'm not here to paint the CIA as whiter than white or saintly, but they act, rightly or wrongly, in defence of American interests.
And they will use any methods they can.
In defence of American interests.
Capitalist interests, yeah. American interests.
Capitalist interests, yes.
Well, America's capitalism that's America's capitalist.
Which is why all Vladimir Putin's closest allies move all their money into capitalist countries.
But why do you Why do you have to come on one side or the other? Why do you come on? Let's say, for instance, both are lying or both are telling the truth, whatever you want to say. The only way to find out the truth is to find out the history of what's been going on, find out the real facts of what's been going on. Well, the CIA say Russia.
They have. It started in 2011 with an attempt to personally undermine Hillary Clinton, who had questioned the legitimacy of Mr. Putin's election, and it evolved into an effort to undermine trust in the entire electoral system. Donald Trump stood up in public and said, "Come on, Russia, publish more of those emails," and he is the president-elect. I don't know what side of an argument you think that you're defending here. Everyone agrees, even Donald Trump agrees, prior to getting elected, that the Russians were playing a part in it. After getting elected, obviously, he has to backtrack from that position. If you don't trust the intelligence services to protect your own country's interests, even to do things that you would disapprove of for the greater good, if you will, it's why the Marine A case is so tricky for so many people. What is the point of having them?
So my country's right no matter what.
No, what is the point of... That's not what I said. What is the point of having intelligence services?
There's no point in having intelligence services.
Well, at least we can agree on that. It's 10:47. Just throw this into the mix as well. Jack Kingston is a former congressman from Georgia who met American businessmen in Moscow this week to discuss and encourage companies to set up something called soft diplomacy. He told NPR Radio that sanctions against Russia for its invasion of Crimea had been in place long enough. So sanctions in response to military invasions are temporary arrangements until everything's calmed down a bit, and then you just leave the invaders where they were. He went on to hint that Mr. Trump may remove those sanctions because, and I quote, he doesn't have to abide by the Obama foreign policy. That gives him a fresh start. OK. At the same time, a chap called Carter Page, former advisor to Mr. Trump's campaign, appeared at a news conference hosted by Sputnik News, a state-run Russian news agency. Wow. Even Mr. Trump's campaign cut ties with this guy, an investment banker who spent his career doing deals with Gazprom, the Russian oil giant, when the relationship seemed problematic for voters. So when it was just getting a little bit too clear that there were ties to the Kremlin that would be very hard to explain, they temporarily kicked this guy into touch. And there he was in Moscow on Monday, lamenting that relations were still in a Cold War mindset and that the two should work more closely. What's wrong with that? Well, off the top of my head, Alexander Litvinenko is what is wrong with that. Sergei Magnitsky is what is wrong with that. I mean, political opponents and journalists, dissidents, objectors to a regime being disappeared or killed or jailed. That is against every single thing you could describe as a Western value. And yet, he's winning. And I don't understand why, except for this, having listened to the callers today. If you don't trust anybody anymore, and there are some responsible reasons for doing that. The weapons of mass destruction dossier, I think, is valid. Edward Snowden's revelations, I think, are part of that process. But I suspect for your average Rust Belt voter in America, it is just the drip, drip, drip of demagoguery telling you not to trust these people. These people can't be trusted. If you can't trust anyone, can't trust the CIA. That caller's here from flipping Ealing, just up the road from me. Don't trust the CIA, don't trust the FBI because they've done some bad things. You can never, ever believe them ever again. Fine. But if you don't trust anybody at all, like literally, you just choose who you trust. It's not based upon truth or fact or objectivity or evidence. It's just based upon personal preferences and prejudices. Who are you going to choose? Who are you going to choose? You're going to choose the person saying the thing you like the most, whether it's true or not. All this sort of highfalutin talk about democratic values, pluralism, liberalism, whatever it may be, if you can undermine the media, and the media has done a lot of the undermining itself, to such a point where people literally don't have anyone they can trust, they're going to trust the guy who says what they want to hear. All your problems? Immigration. All your issues in life, your failure to get further ahead? Foreigners. Yeah, I like that. Because, you know, if it is actually the system that is responsible for the problems I've got, and I've kind of voted for the system, and I'm even a little bit right-wing, so I've kind of voted for the people running the system. Yeah, I'm much happier choosing Mexicans and Muslims. Even if it turns out Vladimir Putin is yanking this guy's strings, I'm happier with that, because the alternative's just too complicated. Jack's in Finsbury Park. Jack, what's going on?
You all right, James?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm caller, so big fan.
Yeah, of course I will.
Yeah, so, I mean, mainly, you I mean, a couple of calls ago, you kind of conceded that America pretty much does anything or most things in its interest, as long as it's in its interest.
Well, no, again, no, you come up with one example of the CIA behaving in a way that is not morally absolutely beyond criticism, and either you say, yeah, that's bad, and I wish it didn't happen, but I'd rather take my chances with that sort of system than one in which you trust Vladimir Putin more.
Well, I think the amazing thing about, well, I mean, the Cold War and intelligence services in general, I mean, I think you have to be, maybe not you, but you have to be quite naive to think that the CIA hasn't ordered extrajudicial killings in other countries.
But nobody is saying that the CIA are blameless. They are saying that the White House, all the intelligence agencies in America, members of Congress from both parties and 3 Senate committees are on one side of this argument, and Vladimir Putin is on the other. Why would anybody in the West be tempted to choose Vladimir Putin's side when we know that he murders political opponents?
I don't think it's so much about. I mean, this does in general fit into a bigger narrative about Russia, I think, and what people see as, you know, a kind of one-sided narrative, particularly in the West, about, you know, things that they can do. And, you know, for example, if sanctions were applied, every country in the world decided to apply sanctions to Britain and America for every kind of war, every invasion that they've launched, or every coup. I mean, in 2009, the US supported a coup in Honduras against the democratically elected left-wing government. If every country in the world decided we should put sanctions on Britain and the US, it would be madness. So I think there is people just recognise a slight hypocrisy in the narrative.
So because and this might be where social media comes into it, so because you can find a lot more easily, perhaps in the olden days you'd have to read a book or something, now you can just Google it or log onto a website, and look, it turns out the CIA aren't whiter than white, and our intelligence agencies have done some terrible things in our name. Do you know what? They've probably broken the Geneva Convention in Syria already. They just weren't unfortunate enough to have a colleague filming it, and no one is saying that's good or desirable, but because we can't paint ourselves as whiter than white anymore, then we're exactly the same as the demons, because we can't prove we're angels, we can't pretend we're angels, so we must be exactly the same as the devils.
Well, I mean,
that is what you're saying.
Well, no, I mean, even that. I mean, the devils. I mean, I don't think you can say what happened. Well, I don't think you can say Russian intelligence services. There's no such thing as moral equivalence. I mean, people, you know, they've done terrible things, and we've done terrible things in our name.
But that's moral equivalence right there, that you just described in the same sentence as saying there's no such thing as moral equivalence.
No, I mean, saying that there is. The world isn't black and white. I mean, you know.
But that's what I just said. Because the world isn't black and white, we all go dark.
Well, no, I think we just have to have some.
So you honestly see, on a scale, with all of our Western institutions on one side, and a KGB man and his kleptocracy on the other, and you see those scales. We've got to look at them really closely to see how they balance out. Hand on heart, that's how you see it.
Intelligence services in particular. Intelligence services in particular.
Okay.
I mean, the idea that, like I've just said, I could run you through a list of coups and conflicts.
I could run you through a list of them as well. But I tell you now...
But that's my point.
Well, yeah, that's my point, actually. Because they are not angels, they must be as bad as the devils.
I don't think it's... No, I mean, like I said, it's not... I mean, you keep painting it as angels and devils. It's not black and white, like I said. They've done terrible things. We've done terrible things.
And that's why people aren't spooked about the fact of them interfering in American elections. And even by the simple, let's even pretend for a moment that you're right, okay, and that there is some way of saying that because the CIA did terrible things in Honduras, then that means that Vladimir Putin's goons aren't that bad. Let's just go down that road right now and look at why they do these things. So why would Vladimir Putin want to interfere in the American election?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's not about them being bad.
Why would Vladimir Putin want to interfere in the American election?
Well, I mean, if he did, it's obviously out in Russia's self-interest, just like...
And if he didn't, why would America, or why would the CIA and the FBI say that he did?
Well, actually, I mean, the FBI and the CIA have two different opinions on it.
But they both agree there's been hacking.
Yeah, no, they both agree.
So why would they lie, in your view?
Why? Yes, I'm not saying they are. I'm saying that we should. Well, first of all, that's a different question. We should treat it with a degree.
Well, it's not complicated. First question: why would Putin hack them? You answered that. So why would the FBI lie about it?
I'm not saying they are. I'm saying I don't think the people that are applying a degree of skepticism to what the CIA is saying are wrong. I think if everyone...
Then you need to tell me why. And the question would be, why would they be lying? Why would they lie about this?